For 30 winters, Holly lived silent as the mountains themselves, his rifle his only friend, memories his only enemies. Then came the night wind, howlin' like a wounded wolf, carryin' the smell of blood and desperation to his door. 10 Apache women, skin stretched tight over bones, eyes hollow as abandoned mine shafts, stood swayin' in knee-deep snow. The oldest clutched a bundle that whimpered, a sound that cut through Holly's chest like a rusty blade. "We die tonight without shelter," their leader said in broken English, pride still burning in her voice despite the death nipping at her heels. Holly's hand tightened on his rifle. Last time he'd trusted strangers. He'd buried his wife and child. Last time he'd opened his door. He'd lost everything. But that child's cry, what would you do, standing on that blood-stained threshold between mistrust and mercy? Share your thoughts, leave your mark, and ride with us into this tale of unlikely family forged in winter's fury. Holly's cabin huddled against the mountainside like a wounded animal, smoke from his chimney the only sign of life for 30 miles in any direction, just as he preferred it. 30 years he'd spent in these mountains. 30 winters of blessed solitude since he'd buried his family and sworn off human connection. The blizzard howled fierce as a she-wolf protecting cubs, rattling shutters and moaning through timber cracks. Holly stoked his fire with gnarled hands, whiskey warming his belly. When the pounding started at his door, his rifle was in hand before conscious thought, old instincts dying hard as mountain granite. Through frosted window glass, he made out dark figures against the snow, natives, women from the look of it, 10 or so, huddled against the wind. "Ain't no welcome for you here," he called through the door, voice rusty from disuse. "We die tonight without shelter," came the reply. English broken, but pride intact despite the desperation. "Children among us." Holly's finger tensed on the trigger guard. "Ain't my concern. Trading post 20 miles south." "No survive 20 miles. Already walked 3 days." Holly's jaw clenched tight as a trap. Last time he'd trusted strangers. He'd dug graves after. Last time he'd opened his door. He'd lost everything. His Mary, little James, their blood-soaking mountain soil, while he failed to protect them. When the door shuddered with another knock, he yanked it open, rifle leveled. Words died on his lips as the youngest collapsed at his feet, skin blue-tinged beneath copper. Behind her, the eldest clutched a bundle that whimpered, a sound that cut through Holly's chest sharper than any knife. That cry, so like James in those final moments. "One night," he growled, stepping back. "First light. You're gone." They stumbled in, bringing cold and the scent of desperation. Holly retreated to his corner, rifle across his knees, watching as they huddled by his fire. Nobody slept that night, the women whispering in their tongue, Holly's eyes never leaving them, hand never far from his gun. Dawn broke with the storm still raging. Escape impossible. Holly stared out at the blinding white and knew he'd just invited either his salvation or destruction. Only time would tell which. Morning light spilled cold through frost-rimmed windows as Holly assessed his unwanted guests. 10 women of varying ages, from a girl barely 16 to an elder, whose face was mapped with wrinkles deep as canyons. 2 small children clung to middle-aged women, their mothers or aunts. He couldn't tell. All wore the distinctive markings of Apache, though their traditional garb was supplemented with scavenged white settler clothing. Their leader, a pony, she called herself, approached him with straight-backed dignity despite hollowed cheeks. "We have skills, can earn keep," she said, gesturing to the others. No plant still growing under snow can hunt, tan hides, make medicine. Holly snorted. Supplies barely last winter for 11 mouths. Do the figurin'. Then we work harder, she replied, unflinching. We take nothing we don't earn. Reluctant negotiations established boundaries. Women would sleep by the fire. Holly in his separate room. They'd contribute to food stores. He'd provide shelter. Communication proved difficult until one woman, Naya, youngest except for the children, revealed surprising knowledge of English. "Where'd you learn white man's tongue?" Holly asked. Suspicion flaring, Naya's eyes dropped. "Father taught." Before he died. Something in her tone raised Holly's hackles, but hunger took precedence over curiosity. He divided the morning's tasks. 2 women would check his trap lines. Others would prepare what little food remained. Holly would hunt. Alone. "Stay inside," he ordered before leaving. "Folks round here don't take kind to Indians, especially Apache." The forest stood silent under its blanket of white. Game tracks scarce as summer rain. Holly moved like a ghost through snow-laden pines, years of solitude having honed his woodcraft to instinct. He returned with 2 rabbits and a grouse, meager fare for so many mouths. He found the women had been busy in his absence. Somehow they'd discovered plants beneath the snow, roots and bark he'd never considered food. The cabin smelled of strange brewing concoctions. The elder, Kima, they called her, directing others in preparation. While checking his trap lines that afternoon, Holly discovered strange tracks circling his cabin, boot prints, not moccasins, someone watching, raiders, maybe, or cavalry scouts. Neither boded well. He reset his traps with extra care, senses alert for danger. That evening, Holly noticed how the women positioned themselves around the children, strongest nearest the door, warrior instinct beneath their desperate state. When he showed them the tracks, whispered conversation erupted, fear evident despite the language barrier. Kima fell into coughing fits that night, her frail body racked with each breath. Holly watched her deteriorate, weighing his precious medicine stores against her life. Medicine he'd traded 4 beaver pelts to obtain from the distant trading post. "Here," he finally muttered, measuring herbs careful as gold dust into boiling water. "Drink slow." Kima's eyes, sharp despite her age, met his with something between gratitude and assessment. She spoke in Apache, and Naya translated, "She says you have healer hands. Your spirit remembers what your mind tries to forget." Holly grunted, uncomfortable with the insight. "Tell her to drink and be quiet." Later, standing watch at his window, Holly spotted movement at the forest edge, too distant to identify, but deliberate, not animal. Someone was out there, watching his cabin with patient malice. "Your people?" he asked a pony, who'd silently joined him. "Not Apache," she replied. "We were cast out, dead, to our tribe." "Then who?" Her eyes, dark as mountain shadows, met his. "Enemies. Always enemies for women alone." Holly checked his rifle load by habit, the click of the mechanism loud in the quiet cabin. Whatever came, he'd be ready. But for the first time in 30 years, he wasn't protecting just himself. A week passed in uneasy coexistence. The storm abated enough for hunting, though deep snow still isolated the cabin from the wider world. Holly found himself reluctantly impressed with the women's abilities. They knew plants he'd overlooked, set snares with clever hands, worked tirelessly despite their weakened state. One crisp morning, Holly dragged his old target stump into the clearing. "You need to learn to shoot," he announced, checking his spare rifle. Ain't much point feedin' you if you can't defend yourselves. Apache stepped forward first, taking the weapon with unexpected familiarity. Her shot hit center target, surprising Holly. Many Apache women learn after men die in white man's wars, she explained, passing the rifle to the next woman. Easier to fight than starve. By midday, Holly had assessed their abilities. Apache and two others needed little instruction. Some showed promise. Others would be liabilities in a fight. Better than he'd expected. The sound of practice shots echoed across the valley, a declaration of presence he'd avoided for decades. Noise carries in these hills, Holly warned. Might as well light a signal fire. Better to be heard and ready than silent and dead, Apache replied, reloading with practiced hands. That night, with blizzard winds howling outside once more, Apache revealed their truth by firelight. They weren't just exiled for tribal disputes. They'd witnessed a corrupt deal between tribal leaders and cavalry officials, trading Apache hunting grounds for personal gain and protection. Their testimony would have exposed both sides, making them targets for elimination. They called us liars, Apache said, bitterness edging her voice, said women imagine things, banished us when winter coming. Expected wolves or cold to silence us forever. Holly understood political exile disguised as tribal justice. He'd seen enough frontier corruption to recognize its pattern. That why you're being tracked. Apache nodded. Both sides want us dead. Truth dangerous as rabid wolf. Holly considered this, staring into the flames. Truth's got sharp teeth. All right, but lies got poison that kills slower. Conversation halted at a pounding on the door. Holly's rifle came up instantly. Women melting into shadows with practiced speed. Opening the door revealed Thomas, a trapper who occasionally traded with Holly, snow-caked on his mismatched furs. Mighty cold night to be trappin', Holly observed, not lowering his weapon. Thomas grinned, gaps showing in his teeth. Got caught in the blow-up. Saw your smoke. His eyes widened at the women visible behind Holly. Well now, company's a surprise. Thought you was a permanent lone wolf. Holly? Temporary arrangement, Holly replied flatly. What brings you up mountain? Thomas stamped snow from his boots, entering despite the lack of invitation. News travels, cleansers moving through territory, raiders targeting any natives, and those harboring them. The warning seemed genuine, but Holly caught Thomas's too interested gaze, lingering on the women, particularly Naya, something calculating in that assessment. Mighty specific news for a simple trapper, Holly noted. Thomas shrugged. Man hears things. Been rumors about Apache women hidin' in these mountains. Bounty on 'em, some say. Bounty? Holly kept his voice neutral. Army wants 'em. Something about witnesses to some deal gone bad. Thomas eyed Naya again. Certain folks willing to pay good coin for their whereabouts. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Holly felt Apache's presence behind him, tense as a drawn bowstring. You always been one to keep to yourself, Holly. Thomas continued, voice too casual. Shame if trouble found you after all these years of peace. The threat hung thinly veiled. Holly nodded slowly. Appreciate the warning. You planning to move on when the weather breaks? Figure I'll stay close a day or two, check my northern trap lines. Thomas smiled, not meeting Holly's eyes. Maybe we can trade again before I head down to the settlement. They offered minimal hospitality, corner space by the fire, coffee but limited food. Throughout the evening, Thomas asked seemingly casual questions about the women's tribe, their journey, how long they'd stay. Holly intercepted the most probing inquiries, discomfort growing with each exchange. By morning's light, the storm had broken enough for travel. Thomas departed with unusual haste, claiming traps needed checking. Holly watched him go, noting his path led not toward his usual territory, but eastward, toward the settlement. "Don't trust him," Naya whispered, appearing at Holly's side. "Don't trust anyone," Holly replied, cleaning his rifle with methodical precision. But the decision had already crystallized in his mind. These women were under his protection now. Whatever came from the ridge that afternoon. Holly spotted distant figures watching through spyglasses, mix of cavalry uniforms and native scouts. Their sanctuary had been found. What dark alliance hunts these women through mountain snow? Share your thoughts, leave your mark, and brace yourself for the ambush that'll turn this mountain sanctuary into a blood-soaked battleground. The day after Thomas left, a massive blizzard descended, burying the mountain in snow deep as a man's chest. For 3 weeks, the world narrowed to the cabin's confines, 11 souls breathing the same smoky air, sharing limited resources, learning each other's habits by forced intimacy. Holly, accustomed to solitude, found himself cornered by human connection. The children, initially shy, now followed him like curious fox kits. The youngest, a boy barely 4, would sit beside him during carving, small hands mimicking Holly's knife work on soft pine scraps. "He likes you," a pony observed one evening. "Says you remind him of grandfather." Holly grunted, uncomfortable with the attachment. Kids don't know any better. Yet he found himself teaching the boy to carve simple animals, the same way he'd planned to teach his son before raiders took that future. The memory rose unbidden, James's tiny hands in his. First clumsy attempts at shaping wood. The knife slipped, cutting Holly's finger. "You bleed," the boy said, concerned. "Ain't the first time," Holly replied, wiping blood on his pants. "Won't be the last." Nights were hardest. Cramped quarters meant nightmares had witnesses. Holly woke one night shouting Mary's name, sweat-soaked despite the cold, to find every eye in the cabin upon him. The shame burned hotter than the fire. "We all have ghosts," Kima said through Naya's translation. "Only weak men pretend otherwise." Gradually, stories emerged in firelight exchanges. Holly revealed fragments of his past, happier days as a young settler with Mary, the attack that left him alone, years of solitary existence. In return, the women shared their histories, a pony's leadership role before exile, Kima's status as medicine woman, children orphaned by cavalry raids, adopted by the group. "We become family not by blood, but by choice," a pony explained. "Each brings strength." Holly recognized the truth in this, though he'd never admit it aloud. Their different skills created unexpected balance. Kima's medicinal knowledge complemented his hunting expertise. Naya's language abilities bridged communication gaps. Children's innocent questions sometimes yielded insights adults overlooked. "Your cabin's stronger with many hands," a pony observed, helping mend his tattered jacket. "Also noisier," Holly grumbled, "but without real heat." Supplies dwindled faster than anticipated. Holly began teaching preservation techniques for leaner times, which plants could sustain life when game grew scarce, how to stretch meat through winter. The women shared their own knowledge, medicines from bark, nourishment from roots he'd overlooked, weaving techniques that repaired his worn clothing. One evening, as Kima prepared a poultice for a child's cough, Holly noticed a silver cavalry button among her possessions. His questioning glance caught Naya's attention. "From her son," Naya explained quietly. "He traded with settlers before dying in fever season. But Holly had seen enough military buttons to know this one was officer grade, not something commonly traded to natives. He filed the observation away. Another piece of a puzzle he couldn't yet assemble. The children proved surprisingly resilient, adapting to cabin life with the flexibility of youth. They created games with pine cones and stones, learned English words from Holly, Apache traditions from the women. The smallest girl, no more than 3, began calling Holly grandfather in Apache, a word that twisted something deep in his chest each time he heard it. During the 3rd week of confinement, Holly noticed Naya examining his old maps with unusual interest, particularly the markings of military outposts. "Looking for something?" he asked, startling her. "Just learning territory," she replied too quickly, rolling the map closed. Later that same day, Holly overheard her and a pony arguing in hushed Apache. Though he couldn't understand the words, the tension was clear, Naya gesturing emphatically toward the maps, a pony shaking her head firmly. When they noticed his presence, the conversation ceased immediately. The storm's fury finally broke after 23 days, leaving a transformed landscape, drifts higher than the cabin roof in places, familiar landmarks buried beneath smooth white contours. Holly emerged like a bear from hibernation, surveying their isolation with mixed feelings. The snow provided protection from unwanted visitors, but also trapped them with dwindling supplies. When the blizzard finally broke, Thomas hadn't returned as promised. His absence confirmed Holly's suspicions. The trapper had sought profit from information about the women. From the ridge that afternoon, Holly spotted distant figures on horseback, at least a dozen, moving methodically through valley approaches, not close enough for action yet. But their pattern was clear, systematic search closing in on the cabin. That evening, Holly outlined their situation bluntly. "Raiders coming, maybe cavalry too. Neither means good for you." "Or you," a pony pointed out. "Helping Indians makes you target too." Holly couldn't argue this truth. His decision to shelter them had placed him on the wrong side of frontier justice, such as it was. The isolation that once protected him now trapped them all. "We need supplies," he said. "Food running low, ammunition lower." "Abandoned mining camp in North Valley," Naya suggested unexpectedly. "Miners left when gold played out last summer. Might have supplies." Holly's suspicion flared again at her specific knowledge. "How you know about that?" Naya's eyes dropped. "Heard men talk." The evasion was obvious, but practical needs outweighed curiosity. Holly planned a supply run, himself, a pony, and 2 strongest women. High risk, but necessary before full spring thaw brought easier travel for their enemies. That night, as preparations were underway, Kima approached Holly with a small leather pouch on a cord. "Protection," she said through Naya. "Old medicine, strong spirit." Holly nearly refused, superstition not being his way, but something in the old woman's eyes stopped him. He nodded once, tucking the pouch inside his shirt. While checking his weapons for the journey, Holly found Naya alone by the window, watching the moonlit snow with troubled eyes. "There's something you ain't telling," he said quietly. "Something that might get us all killed." She turned, fear and resignation in her gaze. "My father," she began, then hesitated. "He was scout for cavalry, not Apache. Mixed blood." Holly waited, sensing there was more. "He took me when visiting camps. I learned things. Maps, outposts, English." Her fingers twisted nervously. "The deal a pony witnessed. My father arranged it." The revelation clicked several pieces into place. Her language skills, knowledge of white settlements, interest in maps. They think I helped make deal, she continued, but I only translated, told a pony what I heard. Her eyes met his, desperate for understanding. Now both sides want me dead most of all. Why not tell others? Holly asked. Some know, a pony protects me. Others would, she trailed off. Apache who help whites not welcomed, even by exiled ones. Holly understood divided loyalties all too well. Your secret's safe, he said finally. But no more surprises. Out here, secrets get folks killed. She nodded, relief visible even in the dim light. That night, Holly dreamed of Mary again, not dying as usual, but standing at his door with the Apache women, asking to be let in. He woke unsettled, the boundary between past and present blurring in ways that left him disoriented. Dawn brought preparation for the supply run. Holly selected equipment with methodical care, extra ammunition, medical supplies, food for the journey. Each choice weighed against likelihood of encounter, possibility of injury. He'd survived 30 years in these mountains by leaving nothing to chance. If we ain't back in 3 days, he told Kima, bar the door, hide the children in the root cellar. Anyone comes who ain't us, shoot first. Kima nodded, understanding perfectly despite the language barrier. She pressed something into Holly's hand, another small leather pouch on a cord. Protection, Naya translated. Return safely. This time Holly accepted without hesitation, tucking the pouch inside his shirt alongside the first. He'd lived long enough to know arrogance before nature, or fate, often proved fatal. As they prepared to depart, the youngest boy, the carver, approached Holly with a small wooden figure. For you, he said in halting English, bear spirit, strong. Holly examined the crude carving, recognizing the child's attempt to replicate his own work. He pocketed it with unusual care. Much obliged, little man. The sun crested the eastern peaks as Holly led his small party into the wilderness, acutely aware that the safety of those remaining depended entirely on their return. They moved like shadows through the brilliant white landscape, following game trails where possible, breaking fresh path where necessary, from a distant ridge. Holly paused to study their back trail through his spyglass. Far below, barely visible against the snow, riders moved toward his cabin, at least 8 men, a mix of uniforms and civilian clothing. Thomas rode among them, pointing toward the North Valley. They know where we're headed, Holly said grimly. Thomas must have spotted signs of the mining camp before. A pony's expression hardened. Then we move faster. They descended into the valley, wind erasing their tracks almost as quickly as they made them. The abandoned mining camp lay a day's journey ahead, but their pursuers had horses and knowledge of their destination. It would be a race, one they couldn't afford to lose. As the day waned, distant torches moved through trees like fireflies, closing in on their sanctuary. The winter that had trapped them had also protected them, until now. The journey to the abandoned mining camp stretched their endurance, breaking trail through waist-deep snow, alert for threats. 4 figures, moving like shadows through white wilderness. Holly led with the instincts of a mountain predator, choosing paths offering both cover and escape routes. Keep to the tree line, he instructed, voice barely audible above the wind. Snow's shallower, harder to track. They traveled in silence, conserving breath in the thin mountain air. Twice, Holly veered from their path when he spotted signs of recent passage, broken branches, disturbed snow. Their pursuers were casting a wide net, spreading out to cover likely routes. As sunset approached, Holly located a sheltered overhang, not quite a cave, but enough to break the wind and hide a small fire. They huddled close, sharing body heat and minimal rations. "How far to mining camp?" Aponi asked, stamping feeling back into her feet. "Half-day's walk in summer," Holly replied. "In this snow, maybe full day." One of the other women, Tani, an intense hunter with a scar across her jaw, nodded toward the darkening sky. "Storm coming again. Good for hiding, bad for traveling." Holly had noticed the same signs, the peculiar stillness, the metallic taste to the air. Weather was turning, which could work for or against them. They rotated watch through the night, keeping the fire small enough to warm without betraying their position. During his shift, Holly caught Aponi studying him with open curiosity. "Something on your mind?" he asked. "Why you help us?" she replied bluntly. "Easier to turn us away, safer." Holly considered this, poking at the embers. "Been asking myself the same question." "And?" He looked up, meeting her gaze. Maybe got tired of being alone. The admission surprised him as much as her. Neither spoke again, but something shifted between them, a recognition of shared vulnerability beneath their careful facades. Dawn brought heavy cloud cover and the first lazy flakes of new snow. They moved out quickly, racing the approaching storm. By midday, the weather closed in, visibility dropping to mere yards, wind driving snow horizontally into any exposed skin. "There." Holly pointed through a momentary clearing to dark shapes ahead, the abandoned mining camp, a cluster of crude structures half buried in snow. They reached the camp by early afternoon, a collection of rough cabins and equipment sheds arranged around a central clearing. The miners had departed hastily when a late autumn storm threatened to trap them, leaving behind heavier supplies they couldn't transport. "Work fast," Holly ordered. "Take only what we need, what we can carry." Luck favored them. Previous occupants had left in haste, abandoning preserved food, ammunition, even medicine. They worked quickly, packing supplies into makeshift sleds constructed from barrel staves and rope. "Someone's been here recent," Aponi noted, pointing to disturbed snow near one cabin. Holly examined the tracks, boot prints similar to those circling his cabin. "Thomas or his friends. Let's move fast." They were nearly finished when a shot cracked through the thin mountain air, splinters exploding from a post inches from Holly's head. He dove behind a barrel, rifle coming up instinctively. "Take cover," he shouted, spotting movement at the camp's edge. The ambush erupted sudden, as summer lightning, raiders positioned above, others emerging from behind cabins. Holly counted at least 8 men, mix of whites in cavalry cast-offs and native scouts in mismatched clothing. Leading them, a tall figure in officer's coat despite no official cavalry presence, a man Holly recognized from settlement disputes years back, Major Reed, known for his cleansing raids against tribes that resisted relocation. "Take the women alive." Holly's first shot dropped a raider scrambling between cabins. The women proved their worth instantly, Aponi and the others returning fire with precision that spoke of previous combat experience. They retreated toward a mine entrance, using supply sleds as partial cover. "We're pinned," Holly grunted, reloading with fingers stiff from cold. "Too many." Aponi's eyes scanned the steep snow-laden slopes above the camp. Without warning, she fired 3 rapid shots into the snowpack overhead. For 1 heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a low rumble began, growing to thunderous roar as tons of snow broke loose. "Run!" she screamed, grabbing Holly's arm. They fled as the avalanche crashed down, burying at least 3 pursuers. The massive snowslide blocked the camp entrance behind them, temporary salvation, but also cutting off their direct route home. Remaining raiders would circle around. Holly knew. They had perhaps 2 hours advantage now. "How'd you know to do that?" he asked a pony when they paused to catch breath. "Not first time being hunted," she replied simply. They pushed onward through deepening afternoon, taking a longer route home through unfamiliar territory. The storm intensified, both hindrance and help, slowing their progress but obscuring their trail. Near a narrow pass, Holly held up his hand, signaling halt. "Something's wrong," he whispered, eyes scanning the rocks ahead. Before anyone could respond, rifle fire erupted from both sides, an ambush within the ambush. 2 scouts had circled ahead, anticipating their route. Holly took a bullet graze across his ribs during the brief, fierce exchange. A pony dispatched both attackers with cold efficiency while he stemmed the bleeding. "Never thought I'd bleed for strangers," he muttered as she bound the wound with strips of clothing. "Not strangers now," she replied, eyes meeting his with unexpected intensity. The wound slowed their pace, each step becoming an exercise in endurance. Blood froze on Holly's clothes, the pain a constant companion as they navigated the treacherous landscape. Daylight waned, forcing them to press on through gathering darkness, navigating by the occasional break in cloud cover revealing stars. "We need shelter," Tani insisted, noting Holly's increasing pallor. "He won't make it back tonight." A pony nodded reluctantly. "There's cave system near here. Used by our hunters sometimes." They located the cave entrance just as Holly's strength began to fail, his vision narrowing to a tunnel focused solely on the next step. Inside, they risked a small fire, melting snow for water and warming frozen limbs. A pony examined Holly's wound by firelight, her face grim. "Bleeding inside. I think needs Kima's medicine." "We'll make it back tomorrow," Holly insisted, though privately he wondered. The distance remaining was substantial, his strength ebbing with each hour. "I go for help," Tani volunteered. "Faster alone. Bring Kima by midday." The plan made sense, but splitting their already small group carried its own risks. After brief discussion, they agreed. Tani would leave at first light, traveling light and fast, while Holly and the others would follow more slowly, meeting any rescue party coming from the cabin. As Tani prepared, Holly pulled a small map from his pocket, marking their location and the most direct route back. "Stay off ridgelines," he advised. "They'll be watching high ground." The night passed in fitful watches, Holly's fever rising despite the cold, his dreams tangled past and present, Mary's face blending with a pony's, his son's laughter echoing alongside the Apache children's. He woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where and when he was. "You spoke in sleep," a pony said, offering water. "Called for your wife." Holly nodded, too weak for embarrassment. "Been a long time since I said her name aloud." "Speaking of dead keeps them with us," a pony replied. "Apache believe this." "What if you want to forget?" Holly asked. "Then you would not speak their names in dreams." She answered simply. At dawn, Tani departed, disappearing into the snowy landscape with the silence of a hunting puma. The others waited until full light before continuing, Holly leaning heavily on a makeshift staff, his wounded side a furnace of pain. They'd covered perhaps 2 miles when they encountered a figure stumbling through snow, initial alarm giving way to cautious approach when they recognized a settler. Not raider. The man, Seth Wilson by his account, had fled his homestead after raiders attacked. "Killing anyone harboring Indians," he gasped, frostbite blackening his fingers. "Claim they're following military orders, but it's just murder." Holly exchanged glances with a pony, another mouth to feed. But leaving him meant certain death. "Cabin's a half-day north," Holly said, vision swimming with fever. "If you can walk." Seth fell in with them, his city-bred clothing wholly inadequate for mountain winter. A pony shared her outer fur, revealing unexpected compassion despite her wariness of white settlers. By midday, Holly's condition deteriorated sharply, each step a battle against unconsciousness. The wound had reopened, blood seeping through makeshift bandages. They paused in a sheltered grove, a pony examining the injury with increasing concern. "We need to stop," she insisted. "You die if we continue." "We stop, we all die," Holly countered, struggling to his feet. "Raiders between us and cabin. Only chance is to keep moving. Meet Tani and others coming for us." They compromised, fashioning a travois from branches and hides, allowing Holly to be partially dragged while conserving strength. Seth and a pony took turns pulling, following game trails where possible to ease the journey. The afternoon stretched into endless white torment, broken only by periodic rest stops, becoming increasingly frequent as Holly's fever climbed. During one such pause, Seth scouted ahead, returning with grim news. Riders moving through valley below. 8, maybe 10, some in uniform. "Cutting us off from cabin," a pony concluded. "How far ahead?" 2 miles, moving slow, searching. Holly roused himself from semi-consciousness. "Alternative route," he mumbled. "East ravine, steeper, but sheltered." The detour added precious hours to their journey, the sun already dipping toward mountain peaks as they navigated the treacherous ravine. Holly drifted in and out of awareness, anchored to consciousness only by a pony's voice, periodically demanding response. "Stay awake, old man," she commanded. "Not done with you yet." As twilight descended, they crested a ridge, revealing a panoramic view of the valley, including Holly's cabin in the distance. Smoke rose from the chimney, a welcome sight, until Seth pointed to movement surrounding the structure. "Raiders," he whispered. "They've found it." Through Holly's spyglass, they could make out figures surrounding the cabin, at least 6 men taking positions. No gunfire yet, suggesting the women inside remained undetected or were holding off attackers. "Need to warn them," Holly rasped, struggling to rise. "Need to reach them first," a pony countered, studying the terrain between their position and the cabin. "Night coming. Good for us. Bad for them." They formulated a desperate plan, wait for full darkness, then approach from the blind side of the cabin where forest grew closest. Seth would create a diversion to draw attention, while a pony and the other woman attempted to reach the cabin with Holly. As they waited for darkness, Holly examined the wooden bear carving the boy had given him, turning it over in fever-weakened fingers. "Never figured to die defending folks I just met," he murmured. "Not dying today," a pony stated firmly. "Too stubborn." Holly managed a weak smile. "Been told that before." Night fell with agonizing slowness, stars appearing one by one in the clear mountain sky. They moved out when the moon was high enough to provide minimal light, Holly insisting on walking despite his deteriorating condition. They approached the cabin's perimeter undetected, counting 7 raiders in total, including Thomas. The trapper's betrayal confirmed. Seth circled west, prepared to create his diversion, while Holly and the women crept closer to the cabin's rear wall. A shot rang out from the western ridge, Seth's signal, drawing immediate response from the raiders. In the momentary confusion, a pony rapped sharply on the cabin's back wall in a distinct pattern. Seconds later, a small section of wall shifted, a concealed exit Holly had forgotten building years ago, designed for emergency escape. Kima's face appeared in the opening, eyes widening at Holly's condition. They squeezed through quickly, a pony dragging Holly the final few feet as his strength finally failed completely. Inside, the cabin had been transformed into a fortress, furniture barricaded against windows, women positioned with rifles at strategic points, children hidden in the root cellar. Kima immediately began treating Holly's wound, applying poultices that burned like fire while chanting in Apache. "Raiders found us this morning," Naya explained, helping position Holly near the fire. "Been watching, waiting for reinforcements before attacking." "That'll be Reed," Holly managed, shivering despite the heat. "Likes overwhelming odds." A pony conferred with the other women, quickly assessing their situation. 8 rifles, limited ammunition, food for maybe 1 week. No escape route with raiders watching. "They'll attack at dawn," Holly predicted, fighting to remain conscious. Standard cavalry tactic. As Kima worked on his wound, the cabin defenders prepared for siege, distributing ammunition, assigning positions, preparing water buckets in case of fire. Holly watched through fever haze, struck by the transformation of these desperate refugees into a coordinated unit. "You'll need to lead them," he told a pony, voice fading. "I'm not much use right now." "Rest," she replied, briefly touching his forehead. "Fight coming tomorrow." "Need you then." As consciousness slipped away, Holly heard the women continuing preparations, calm, determined voices discussing tactics, contingencies, survival. His last thought before darkness claimed him was unexpected. For the first time in 30 years, he wasn't alone. They limped toward the cabin, blood freezing on their clothes, knowing tomorrow would bring war to their doorstep. Holly woke to shouting and the acrid smell of smoke. Daylight filtered through frost-rimmed windows, illuminating a cabin in battle readiness, women positioned at defensive points, weapons loaded, water buckets stationed strategically. Pain lanced through his side as he struggled to sit up, the previous day's wound a throbbing reminder of their desperate situation. "They've started," a pony said, appearing beside him. "Fired the woodshed as distraction." Holly's mind cleared rapidly, survival instincts overriding pain. How many? 12 now. More arrived during night. She helped him to a window, where he could assess the situation. The raiders had taken positions surrounding the cabin, using trees and outbuildings as cover. Major Reed was visible near the edge of the clearing, his officer's coat unmistakable as he directed men with military precision. Several carried torches despite the daylight, their intention to burn out the defenders clear. "They want you alive," Holly noted, seeing how the raiders aimed high when firing. "Me, they'll happily kill." "They think we know names," a pony explained. "Officials involved in land deal. Want to silence us." Holly checked his rifle, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound. "Been silent 30 years. Don't intend to start talking now." The cabin's defenses had been well planned, Kima and the children secured in the root cellar, the strongest women, including a pony and Naya, positioned at windows, others reloading and tending to needs. Seth had managed to slip inside during the night, his city clothes exchanged for Holly's spare buckskins, his frostbitten hands bandaged but still able to handle a rifle. "Raiders tried talking first," Seth informed Holly. "Offered safe passage to the women if they'd surrender. When that failed, they fired the woodshed." "Reed's not known for keeping promises," Holly replied. "Once had a Shoshone guide hanged after guaranteeing his safety." The morning progressed in sporadic exchanges of gunfire, Raiders testing defenses. Defenders conserving precious ammunition. Holly positioned himself at the north window despite Kima's protests about his condition. The fever had broken overnight, leaving him weak but clear-headed. Around midday, the attacks intensified. 3 raiders rushed the east wall simultaneously, while others provided covering fire. Tani took a bullet in the shoulder but still managed to drop 1 attacker. The others retreated, dragging their wounded companion. "They're probing," Holly explained, "looking for weakness." "What happens when they find it?" Seth asked. "They don't," Aponi answered firmly. As afternoon approached, a new tactic emerged. A white flag appeared, with Thomas the trapper walking slowly toward the cabin. Holly and Aponi exchanged glances. Suspicion shared without words. "Hear me out. Let him approach," Holly decided. "Want to hear what lies they're selling?" Thomas came closer, nervous eyes darting between defenders visible at windows. "Reed says there's been a misunderstanding. Just wants to talk to the girl. Naya. Rest of you can go free." "What girl?" Holly called back, playing ignorant. "Don't play dumb. Holly, the scout's daughter, the one who speaks English." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "She's the only one they really want." A tense silence filled the cabin. All eyes turned to Naya, who stood frozen, face drained of color. "What are they talking about?" one of the younger women demanded in Apache. Aponi stepped forward, placing herself protectively beside Naya. "Tell Reed he can go to hell," she called to Thomas. "Don't be fools. The girl for everyone's lives. Fair trade." "Nothing fair about it," Holly responded. "Tell Reed if he wants anyone here, he'll have to come through me first." Thomas shook his head. "Always were stubborn. Holly, they know about her, who her father was, what she heard. Army don't like loose ends." He backed away. "You've got 1 hour to send her out, or they start burning." As Thomas retreated, confused whispers filled the cabin. Several women stared at Naya with growing suspicion. "What does he mean? Scout's daughter?" Tani demanded, clutching her wounded shoulder. Naya looked to Aponi, who nodded slightly. The younger woman took a deep breath before addressing the group in Apache, Aponi translating for Holly and Seth. "My father was mixed blood, half Apache, half white. He worked as scout for cavalry." Her voice trembled but held steady. "When tribal leaders negotiated with Army, I translated. Heard everything, which officials took bribes, which tribal leaders sold hunting grounds." The revelation sparked immediate reaction, some women backing away as if from a snake, others shouting accusations of betrayal. "You are enemy." "No." Holly watched the community fracture before his eyes. Years of tribal suspicion and painful history erupting in a moment of crisis. Aponi attempted to restore order, but the damage was done. Several women refused to stand near Naya, creating a physical division within their already precarious sanctuary. "Enough," Holly's voice cut through the chaos, surprising even himself with its force. He stood, ignoring the pain that threatened to double him over. "Don't matter who her father was. Matters what she's done. Has she fought alongside you, helped you survive, risked her life, same as anyone?" Reluctant nods answered him. "Then she's earned her place," he continued. "More'n I can say for some folks I've known my whole life." He fixed each woman with a steady gaze. "We start turning on each other. We've already lost." His words brought uneasy silence, not agreement, but at least a pause in open hostility. Aponi used the moment to reorganize their defenses, assigning positions that separated the most vocal accusers from Naya. As the hour deadline approached, Holly pulled Naya aside. "Your choice," he said quietly. "No one here would blame you for saving yourself." Tears filled her eyes. "Would you?" "Wouldn't be here to judge," he replied honestly. "But I'd understand." She straightened her shoulders. "My father chose white world over his people. I will not make same mistake." Holly nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Then we stand together." When the hour expired, Reed's response was immediate and brutal. Flaming arrows arced toward the cabin roof, while raiders approached from multiple directions. The defenders returned fire, dropping 2 attackers, but the assault continued with coordinated precision. "Roof's catching," Seth shouted, pointing to smoke seeping through ceiling boards. 2 women climbed into the rafters with water buckets, fighting the spreading flames, while others maintained defensive fire. Holly and Apache worked side by side at the south window, their shots creating a deadly crossfire with Tawny's position. The attack intensified as afternoon waned, raiders pressing closer under covering fire. A bullet splintered the window frame beside Holly, sending wooden shards into his cheek. Blood trickled down his face, mingling with sweat and smoke. "Running low on ammunition," Apache reported, counting remaining cartridges. "Maybe 20 shots left." "Make each one count," Holly replied, sighting carefully before dropping a raider attempting to reach the porch. As sunset approached, nature intervened. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, bringing the distinctive smell of approaching rain, rare for the season. The storm promised both challenge and opportunity. "Fire will go out," Apache observed as the first heavy drops struck the roof. "But visibility will drop. They could rush us in darkness." Holly considered this, mind racing through possibilities. "Root cellar," he said suddenly. The tunnel. Years earlier, he'd begun digging an escape tunnel from the root cellar. Abandoned when the rocky ground proved too difficult, it extended only 15 feet, but in the confusion of rain and darkness, it might create an opportunity. "We dig out tonight," he explained to Apache. "Create distraction at dawn. Slip some out the tunnel while others cover from here." She weighed the plan's merits against its considerable risks. "Split our strength? Better than dying together," Holly countered. Before they could discuss further, a massive thunderclap shook the cabin, followed by torrential rain that instantly doused the smoldering roof. The unexpected deluge created momentary confusion among the raiders, several abandoning exposed positions for better cover. Now, the defenders unleashed a coordinated volley, dropping another raider and forcing the others back to the tree line. The respite would be temporary. Reed would regroup quickly, but it bought precious time to implement their desperate plan. As darkness fell, the cabin's interior became a flurry of controlled activity, Kima treating wounds, Seth and 2 women beginning the tunnel expansion, others redistributing the dwindling ammunition and preparing for a night without fire to avoid creating targeting silhouettes. Holly found Naya sitting alone in the darkest corner, her face a mask of misery. "Not your fault," he said, settling beside her with a stifled groan of pain. "All of it my fault," she whispered. "If not for me, if not for you, these women would have died in the snow outside my door." Holly interrupted. "Way I see it, you saved them twice. Once by warning about corruption, once by leading them here." She looked up, surprise momentarily displacing guilt. "You believe that?" "Wouldn't say it otherwise," Holly replied. "Never been much for wasted words." A tentative smile touched her lips. "Apache says same thing about you." Holly changed the subject, uncomfortable with the personal turn. "Need your help with the tunnel, your hand smaller than mine. Better for tight spaces." She nodded, purpose replacing despair. "I won't fail them again." ain't about not failing," Holly said, rising painfully. "About keeping on when you do." Outside, the storm intensified, rain becoming sleet that rattled against the cabin like thrown pebbles. Visibility dropped to mere feet, transforming the battlefield into a chaotic dreamscape of shadow and sound. Raiders occasionally fired toward the cabin, maintaining pressure while conserving resources. In this temporary stalemate, Holly gathered the defenders for a council of war. Their situation remained dire: limited ammunition, 2 wounded, dwindling food, enemies on all sides. But for the first time, they had something resembling a plan. "We dig through night," he explained. "At dawn, we either make our stand or our escape." Dawn approached blood-red through smoke, promising only more battle to come. But would they face it united or divided? With the cabin burnin', trust shattered, and raiders circlin' like hungry wolves, can this broken band possibly survive till mornin'? Holler your predictions. Brand this tale with your mark, and brace yourself for the most gut-wrenchin' last stand this side of the divide through the night. They worked in shifts, digging at the tunnel's end while others stood watch, straining eyes and ears against the storm's cacophony for signs of approaching raiders. The root cellar's earthen floor yielded reluctantly to their tools. Each foot gained a victory of blistered hands and aching muscles. Holly alternated between supervising the dig and checking defenses, his wounded side a constant reminder of their precarious situation. Fever threatened to return, held at bay only by Kima's bitter herbal concoctions that a pony insisted he drink. "Tastes like boiled moccasins," he complained after one particularly noxious dose. "Medicine not supposed to taste good," Kima replied through Naya's translation. "Otherwise, everyone would be sick just to drink it." The unexpected humor lightened the mood briefly, a precious commodity in their desperate circumstances. Near midnight, the diggers broke through the final barrier of earth and stone, creating an opening barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. Beyond lay a steep slope descending toward the creek bed, exposed but offering a route away from the cabin that the raiders might not be watching. "Who goes?" Tani asked, the question hanging heavy in the smoky air. "Children first," Aponi decided, looking to Holly for confirmation. "With Kima and 2 others." He nodded, adding, "Then wounded. Rest stay to cover retreat." The plan made tactical sense, but divisive undercurrents remained. Several women still regarded Naya with suspicion, reluctant to turn their backs on her during escape. The fragile unity forged in battle threatened to splinter again under pressure. Kima, sensing the tension, performed an unexpected ritual before preparations continued. From her medicine pouch, she produced a small clay bowl, filling it with herbs that smoldered when lit, one by one. She approached each defender, including Holly and Seth, wafting smoke over them while chanting softly, "For protection," Naya translated. "She asks ancestors to guard our path." Even the most skeptical accepted the blessing, the shared ceremony bridging cultural divides that words could not cross. When Kima reached Naya, she paused longer, speaking directly to the young woman in Apache. "She says, 'Your father's blood does not define you,'" Aponi translated for Holly. "Only your choices now." Tears streaked Naya's dirt-smudged face as she bowed her head to receive the blessing. Something shifted in the cabin's atmosphere, not forgiveness exactly, but a suspension of judgment in the face of shared danger. As dawn approached, Holly gathered everyone for final instructions. Creek follows valley 3 miles east, settlement beyond. Anyone gets separated, head there. He turned to the children, kneeling despite the pain to meet their eyes. Remember what I taught you about moving quiet? Like hunting? They nodded solemnly. Small faces grave with understanding beyond their years. Good. Do exactly what Kima tells you. Don't look back, no matter what you hear. To his surprise, the youngest boy, the carver, threw small arms around his neck in a fierce embrace. Come to, the child pleaded in broken English. Holly gently disentangled himself, voice rough with emotion he couldn't afford. Soon as I can, little man. Got something to finish first. The storm's fury had diminished to steady rainfall, providing continued cover, but revealing the first gray hints of approaching dawn. Through a carefully cleared portion of window, Holly spotted raiders huddled in miserable clusters, maintaining their positions despite the weather. No sign of Thomas or Reed, the leaders keeping to better shelter. No doubt. Almost time, he told a pony. Need a distraction big enough to cover the noise of them leaving. She considered this, then nodded toward the remaining kerosene. Fire at front might draw them that direction, away from tunnel exit. The strategy was sound, but required perfect timing. Too early, and daylight would expose the escapees. Too late, and the raiders might discover the tunnel during their assault. Seth volunteered to create the diversion, his city clothes making him an unlikely survivor if captured. Figure I owe you folks, he said simply. Got me this far alive. Final preparations moved with quiet efficiency. Children bundled in extra clothing, essentials distributed among the escapees. Weapons checked one last time. Holly found himself standing beside a pony as they waited for the signal to begin. Think they'll make it? He asked softly, nodding toward the tunnel where Kima was organizing the first group to leave. Some will, she answered, brutal honesty reflecting the stakes. Enough to matter. Holly nodded, understanding completely. In a world that had tried to exterminate these women, survival itself was victory. They'd built something here, not just a defense, but a beginning, a sanctuary worth protecting, even at the ultimate cost. They moved to positions as first light broke over mountains, ready to stand together or fall together. Dawn arrived with deceptive gentleness, pale light filtering through rain-washed air as birds resumed tentative songs in surrounding pines. The calm belied the violence poised to erupt around Holly's cabin, raiders regrouping after the night's discomfort, defenders preparing their desperate gambit. Ready? Holly asked, meeting each person's eyes one final time. Determined nods answered him. Seth moved to the front door, kerosene can in hand, while those remaining took positions at windows in the root cellar below. Kima led the first group of children into the narrow tunnel, their departure masked by the storm's lingering rumbles. Seth's distraction came with explosive force. He flung open the door just enough to toss the flaming kerosene onto the porch, immediately triggering a barrage of gunfire from startled raiders. The defenders returned fire from every window, creating an impression of greater numbers than remained. Second group, go, Holly ordered as the battle intensified. Below, Tani and another wounded woman followed the escape route, helping each other through the tight passage. The thunder of gunfire above covered their movements as the cabin became the focus of Reed's full attention. The major himself appeared at the tree line, directing his men into attack positions. Burn them out! Raiders rushed forward with torches despite the rain, determined to finish what they'd started. Holly and a pony fired in coordinated rhythm, one shooting while the other reloaded. maximizing their dwindling ammunition. A torch hit its mark, flames catching at the cabin's eastern corner. Seth and Naya fought the fire while continuing to defend. The interior filling with smoke that stung eyes and burned lungs. Through his spyglass, Holly spotted a familiar figure among the attackers, Thomas, the trapper, hanging back while others advanced. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, Thomas looking away first. "Last group ready?" Holly called to a pony. "Ready?" she confirmed, helping the remaining defender toward the cellar hatch. "Go. We'll hold them off." A pony's expression hardened. "Not leaving." "Wasn't asking," Holly replied, then softened. "Someone's got to lead them." Before she could respond, a massive crash shook the cabin. Raiders had breached the eastern wall. In the chaos that followed, Holly found himself face to face with Major Reed, whose cavalry revolver pointed squarely at his chest. "Where is she?" Reed demanded. "The half-breed translator?" Holly's rifle came up despite knowing he'd never beat the officer's already aimed pistol. "Gone, along with your chance to silence them." Reed's face contorted with rage as he pulled the trigger, only to jerk sideways as a shot from behind Holly struck his shoulder. Naya stood in the smoke, Holly's spare revolver steady in her hands. "Not gone," she said quietly. "Not running anymore." What followed unfolded with dreamlike intensity, Holly diving for cover as Reed fired wildly, a pony launching herself at another raider breaking through the doorway. Seth swinging a burning beam like a club when his rifle jammed. Through the smoke and chaos came an unexpected sound, war cries from the forest edge, followed by a volley of arrows and gunfire striking the exposed raiders from behind. The last shot echoed away across the valley, leaving only the sound of spring runoff and labored breathing. 2 months later, spring transformed the mountain. Snowmelt fed rushing streams. Wildflowers pushed through soil once blood-soaked, and birds returned to rebuild nests in trees scarred by gunfire. Nature reclaimed the battlefield with indifferent beauty, covering winter's harshness with new life. Where Holly's cabin once stood, a larger structure now rose, log walls extending twice the original footprint, multiple rooms accommodating the expanded community. The unexpected allies who had turned the tide of battle, a hunting party from a different Apache band, led by a warrior who opposed the corrupt tribal leaders, had joined their sanctuary, bringing strength in numbers and fresh skills. Holly stood on a newly constructed porch, watching children play in the clearing, Apache and white orphans from raided settlements alike, their games transcending the divisions of their elders. The youngest boy, his self-appointed shadow, carefully whittled beside him, small face intent on creating shapes from wood. "He has your scowl," a pony observed, joining them with a basket of spring greens. "When concentrating," Holly grunted, uncomfortable with the comparison, but secretly pleased. His side had healed clean thanks to Kima's medicine, though it pulled tight in damp weather, a small price for survival when so many hadn't. They had buried their dead, with ceremonies honoring both cultures, Christian crosses alongside Apache traditions marking graves on the sunny hillside. Major Reed was not among them. The wounded officer had been taken by his few surviving men, retreating to the settlement where, rumor had it, his claims of Apache uprising found skeptical ears given his unauthorized raid. Thomas had died in the final moments of battle, not by Apache arrow or defender's bullet, but from Reed's own revolver when the trapper attempted to flee. A betrayer betrayed, fitting justice in Holly's estimation. "Council meeting tonight," a pony reminded him. "Need to decide about new hunting territories." Holly nodded, still adjusting to the concept of council and collective decisions after decades of answering to no one. Yet the arrangement worked, combining his knowledge of the mountains with Apache traditions and Seth's connections to sympathetic settlers. That evening, as the community gathered around the central fire, Holly found himself sharing tales of his early years in these mountains, stories untold for decades flowing freely among people who had become family through blood and fire. Kima trained young women in traditional medicine while incorporating settler knowledge. Naya's language skills proved invaluable as more displaced people found their sanctuary. Even Seth had found purpose, establishing trade routes with settlements willing to deal fairly. As twilight deepened into night, Holly watched firelight play across faces that no longer seemed foreign. The isolation he'd wrapped around himself like armor had fallen away, replaced by something he'd never thought to find again: belonging. We become family, not by blood, but by choice. A pony had said in those first difficult days. The truth of those words surrounded him now, in the laughter of children who called him grandfather, in the shared work of building something that might endure, in the healing of wounds both physical and spiritual. Sun set on something new in these mountains, not quite Apache, not quite white, but stronger than either alone. Folks, I reckon this tale of Holly's mountain sanctuary cut deep as a rusty blade for me. Ain't it something how the coldest places, both the frozen peaks and the frost-hard hearts, can thaw into something warm and livin'? This weren't just another shoot-'em-up yarn, though lead sure flew plenty. It's about that moment we all face, standing at our own cabin door with something desperate knockin', deciding whether to bar the way or crack it open despite the risk. Holly lost everything once by trustin', and near lost his soul by hidin' away after. But life's got a way of forcin' choices on us, don't it? Sometimes the very thing we're runnin' from is what we need most: connection, purpose, family. What strikes me hardest is how these folks from worlds apart, a hermit who buried his heart, women exiled from their own kind, a settler with nowhere to call home, they forged something stronger in blood ties, chosen family, built tough enough to weather any storm. The frontier ain't just out there in the wild places. It's in here too, Thump's chest, where we decide who we are when everything's stripped away. When the blizzard's howlin' and the raiders are circlin'. Do we stand alone or together? Do we let old hatreds bury us, or build something new from the ashes? I'm mighty obliged you rode this trail with me, through ambush and avalanche, heartbreak and hope. Ain't many tales show the true grit of frontier folk, not just in gunfights, but in that quiet courage to begin again, to trust again after the world's cut you to the bone. In these mountains, Holly found what we're all searching for, not just survival, but a reason that makes the survivin' worthwhile. Reckon that's the truest treasure in any territory, settled or wild. What moment in Holly's journey spoke to your soul? Was it opening that door, standing that final ground, or building something new from the ruins? Holler back, leave your brand below, and join me on the next dust-kicking ride through the wild frontier of the human heart.